America's top diplomat, Antony Blinken, is in Geneva to meet with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for make-or-break talks that could determine war or peace in Europe. On Thursday, Blinken was in Berlin, where he held talks with German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock and their British and French counterparts. A meeting meant to show a united front and clear up any misunderstanding about Western unity regarding Russian aggression against Ukraine.
The stakes are high. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken landing in Berlin to try and rally America's allies and prevent a war. Unity is the main goal here. Blinken and his German, French and British counterparts discuss the intense fears that Russia may soon invade Ukraine. Their focus, how to credibly deter Moscow, with warnings of what could follow.
Even as we're relentless in pursuing this diplomatic path, we'll continue to make very clear that if Moscow chooses the path of further aggression, we will impose swift and massive costs.
We urgently call on Russia to take steps towards de-escalation. Any further aggression would have serious consequences.
But comments by the US President a day earlier have raised questions about whether those consequences really do apply to any act of aggression.
Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border, it is going to be a disaster for Russia.
The White House later tried to clarify, insisting that the West would react come what may. But the issue has highlighted questions over what level of aggression would trigger what kind of response. The US has made it clear that it would expect Berlin to target the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which links Germany to Russian gas.
It's also worth noting that gas is not flowing through Nord Stream 2 yet, which means that the pipeline is leverage for Germany, the United States and our allies, not Russia.
For now, though, there's another round of diplomacy coming up. Antony Blinken will meet his Russian counterpart in Geneva on Friday, seen as one of the last chances to find a way of avoiding war.
And my colleague Alexander van Namen is in Geneva to follow those talks for us. A few tense days there between the US and Russia. What are we expecting from today's meeting?
I would say that the expectations are not very high here in Geneva on this very stormy, windy day. And US Secretary of State Blinken told the German press that he is not expecting any breakthroughs, that it's more about taking stock of where we stand right now and whether a diplomatic solution to the crisis can be found. And what we have heard from the Russians, they are also quite pessimistic and they are continuing with their very aggressive rhetoric and they are demanding written guarantees from the US and from NATO, and US Secretary of State Blinken has already said that the US is so far not prepared to give them a written response.
Blinken has met with his EU counterparts, or at least some of his EU counterparts this week. Do you think, is there really a united front towards Russia?
Well, I think that they are united in what they are ready to do if there will be a Russian invasion of Ukraine. They have made clear that there will be massive and severe consequences. However, we also have to say, and that is something what even the US President Joe Biden has admitted in a press conference, that they are not so united when we speak about to what extent they are ready to impose political and economic sanctions with some European allies like Germany or France, for example, who have been in the past quite reluctant of inflicting too much pain on Russia.
Well, Russian troops have gathered near the Ukrainian border. How have NATO allies responded so far?
so far, they have made it clear that they are siding with Ukraine and they are ready to support Ukraine. The Baltic states, for example, they want to provide Ukraine with anti-tank missiles and with Stinger air defense systems and weapons that they got from the US, and the US has improved that, and Washington wants to increase its military assistance to Ukraine, and as you can see, there is a strong support for Ukraine in this crisis.
Alexandra van Namen there, joining us from Geneva. Thank you, Alexandra. Well, DW political correspondent Hans Brandt is following this story for us. Hans, what do you make of that meeting? Did it result in the show of unity that the Western allies were hoping for?
Yes, it certainly was a show of unity. The question is to what extent the unity is real behind the scenes, as it were, in the discussions that were going on. And one has to say that there, too, the diplomacy that has been going on in recent days and weeks, a lot of it behind the scenes, has resulted in more agreement, I think, on the side of the, one would call it Western allies, maybe. The German foreign minister emphasized all the groups that are involved in this, the G7, the European Union, and also NATO, that all of these were involved. So we're talking about dozens of countries. That obviously is a stiff ask to try and coordinate all the different opinions amongst all of those countries. But I think what is clear now is that negotiations with Russia are on the most important at the moment, but the responses that might result from Russian aggression are being formulated in the background, although not much about that is being said in the open at the moment.
Hans, Blinken said in that report, interestingly, that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was leverage in favor of Germany and its allies, meaning that Germany could still refuse the final go-ahead to open the taps on the pipeline. Is it likely the German government would do that in the event of a Russian invasion?
Yes, that is one of the possible responses that, in fact, has been discussed openly quite extensively because it has been particularly controversial. The German government has said for quite a long time that this pipeline is a project that is run by private companies. It's a commercial venture, and that it did not want to involve this in the whole dispute. But most recently this week, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has implied that the pipeline will in fact become part of the dealing with Russia if aggression should happen in Ukraine. So there's been some movement, some significant movement on that. Germany is weakening its pose and is giving in basically to United States demands.
Hans Brandt there for us. Thank you, Hans.